So, does anybody have a question related to any other homeworks, like the savings account challenge, whatever that was? Maybe if you had any questions, I'd be happy to go over any of the aspects.
When you're doing the UML for the savings account one, for the class for the savings, you don't need to enter in for the data attributes. You only need the interest, right? Because the name, the address, and the current value, the current balance is already entered into the banking account class, right?
Yes, and I'm trying to think about. Let me actually postpone this record, right? So, so in this situation, we have a savings account which is deriving from an account, and the question is, do we need to repeat customer ID, balance, or any of these in our savings account class? And the answer is, of course, no, because by deriving a class, by making savings account a subclass of the account class, which is the superclass in this situation, what happens at runtime? This is just the way UML displays things, because we really do write these two classes as two separate classes in our Java code or C++ code or Visual Basic code, anything that you'd like to use for your object-oriented environment. So it's typically written as two separate classes, but then you say savings account extends the account in your code. Whereas at runtime, I just want to make sure that we're absolutely perfectly clear on this. Let me just go to Paint. Just a quick demonstration that when at runtime, someone says savings account equals and creates new savings account, what happens that, of course, savings account is a class, and an object is occupying certain memory. So the actual physical object in memory, if I go back to my ways to kind of displaying those objects in memory using those 3D shaped boxes, then make no mistake that the account from which savings account derives is actually part of it. So somewhere here, this little portion inside this box is the account, and all attributes that come from the account are inherited and physically exist within the savings account, right? So like I said before, for me it's easier to draw like this. If this was savings account in memory, the account is right inside of it. It's part of it, it's inside of it, right? But since I prefer to draw it like boxes, then it's more elaborate, something like that, so that this box is inside this box. In fact, if we also had a constructor here, right? So we had public savings account constructor, right? It was one of our methods here. So we have a constructor, and clearly account also has a constructor. We don't specify any parameters, but assume that we know what those parameters are that are required to construct. So each constructor does two things. First, the physical memory is allocated. So someone says new saving account. So the new operator, what it does, it allocates all this memory. Number one, basically goes out and says to your environment, I need this much memory right now for what I'm supposed to do. So the new allocates memory. Number two, now that memory is allocated, the new invokes the constructor. In our case, it's the savings account constructor, the constructor of this big guy, right? So the savings account here immediately doesn't execute, but rather it delegates first step to the superclass constructor. So before savings account does anything at all, it actually calls the superclass constructor to make sure that this part is now fully constructed and done. And now that this little part is finished, the rest of the object can be safely constructed inside the savings account class. So that's why the answer is no. You never need to repeat any of this in any of the class which was derived from the superclass. No need to. Good question, and it has implications in terms of how you write code, and it has implications directly in terms of how these objects look like in memory, because this inheritance, if I may change this a little bit. Let me just check the time. So in reality, right? In reality, this is convenient to draw diagrams. Say, okay, we have account class, but it also has a subclass named savings account. But in reality, when the software executes and you have the savings account, the two boxes are together. This is what it is. It's just like one thing, right? Just one thing at runtime. It's one thing. So it's not a pretty UML diagram, but that's the situation. In fact, it's quite the oh, I don't know what happened. Interestingly, my associations have changed somewhat. So anyway, this is something to remember. This is something to remember. Okay. Any other questions? Let me save this segment and we can move on.